There is a mountain in Laguna, in the southern part of the Philippine island of Luzon, that from a distance looks like a woman lying on her back. Her hair pools into the lowlands. Her knees rise into cloud. People have loved her, feared her, and prayed to her for longer than anyone can name. And here is the strange part I want you to hold on to for the next 15 minutes. The version of her story you probably know. The beautiful woman betrayed by a faithless man is one of the youngest things about her. Let me be precise from the start, because a lot of storytellers are not. She is not the Filipino mountain goddess. There is no such single figure. She is Tagalog. She belongs to the people around Mount Makiling, Laguna de Bai, and that stretch of southern Luzon. That matters because she has cousins who get mistaken for her all the time. There is Maria Sinukuan on Mount Arayat, who is Kapampangan. There is Maria Kakao on Mount Lantoy, who is Cebuano. 3 mountains, 3 peoples, 3 different beings. Flattening them into one is the single most common mistake made about her. And I would rather not make it in the first 2 minutes. To understand her, you have to understand the world she came out of. The world before Spanish ships. In pre-colonial Tagalog belief, the land was not empty. Spirits lived in it, in the mountains, in the huge old trees, the bahleshte and the acacia. In the Tagalog areas, these guardian spirits were called Anito. And here is a piece of terminology worth flagging, because creators trip on it constantly. The word Diwata, the word everyone now uses for Maria Makiling, was originally more a Visayan and Mindanao word. The Tagalog cognate was Anito. Calling her a Diwata in the modern pan-Philippine sense is fine. I will do it myself. But know that you are using a later blended vocabulary for an older Tagalog idea. And these spirits were not gods who demanded worship in the Western sense. They were closer to landlords of the wild. They dispensed blessing or misfortune based on one simple thing: how you treated the forest that was theirs. And near Laguna de Bai, there was another layer to draw on, a lady of the lake. The Bai, the noble lady after whom the town of Bay and the lake itself are named. The folklorist Odal Devo Ra has argued that beneath the name Maria Makiling sits an older Austronesian figure, a Dah Yang Makiling. Dah Yang meaning princess or noble lady, and that the lake lady and the mountain lady may have fused over time. Even her name carries the mountain's shape. Makiling in Tagalog means leaning or uneven, a description of the mountain's tilted profile. There is a minority view that it comes instead from a kind of bamboo, the Kahwa Yang Keeling. 2 readings. I will let them stand side by side. So who is Maria Makiling? In the oldest layer we can reach, she is a guardian, a benevolent one. She is the lady of the mountain's bounty, the one who lets the fruit ripen, who lets the game move through the forest, who sends the mist. In her own domain, she is sovereign. That is the Tagalog framing, and it is the one to start from. Now, one identification you will hear repeated as fact, that Maria Makiling is the pre-colonial goddess Diachen Masa Lan Ta, a deity invoked to hold back storms and floods and earthquakes. I want to be careful here. This link is a folklorist's inference. It is not a documented pre-colonial equation. Some scholars have proposed it. Nobody in the 16th century wrote it down. So the honest way to say it is, some folklorists propose that Makiling absorbed an older storm-calming goddess. Not she was Diachen Masa Lan Ta. I will not hand you a guess dressed as a record. Let me give you the stories the way they actually circulate, because there is not one story. There are several, and they do not agree. The oldest feeling one is the ginger to gold tale. A poor villager, sometimes a mother looking for medicine for a sick child, sometimes a husband, meets Maria on the mountain. She gives him a piece of ginger to take home. On the road, it turns to gold in his hands. In some tellings, he had thrown pieces away because his hat had grown too heavy. And so he loses part of the fortune. And in many versions, greedy neighbors then break into her garden expecting more gold. Offended, Maria withdraws up the mountain and stops giving. That is a story about generosity and greed and the etiquette of the forest, not about romance at all. Then there is the version almost everyone thinks is the legend, the melancholy one. The Diwata who loves a man and is left. And this is where I have to slow all the way down because this version has an author and a date. On the 31st of December, 1890 in Madrid, a Filipino writer published a retelling of the Maria Makiling legend in the reformist newspaper La Solidaridad. He signed it with a pen name, La Ong La An. His real name was Jose Rizal. In his telling, Maria falls in love with a young farmer and watches over him. Villagers even say he carries a charm, a mutya. Then war comes. Spanish recruiters are seizing unmarried men, so the farmer enters an arranged marriage to protect himself. He climbs the mountain to see Maria one last time, and she tells him, in words that have echoed ever since, that he needed an earthly love, that he lacked faith in her, that she could have protected him and his family if only he had trusted her. Then she vanishes forever. But I want to be honest about those words. That dialogue, "I could have protected you," is a paraphrase, a loose translation that circulates in secondary retellings, and I cannot tie it to a specific named page, so treat it as the sense of what Rizal wrote, not a verbatim quote. And here is the thing to sit with. This is not the original Maria Makiling. Rizal was retelling a legend from home. He did not invent her, and oral versions ran alongside and before him. But the wistful, spurned, withdrawing shape, that melancholy that feels so ancient, is largely his. It is romantic era literature, written by an exile in Europe, layered over a much older guardian spirit. When you feel the sadness of Maria Makiling, you are in large part feeling 1890. And there are still more versions. There is a spurned hunter telling, not Rizal's, where she loves a hunter, learns he married a mortal, realizes the townspeople only ever used her, and withdraws her blessings, so the game grows scarce and the fish thin out. And there is a much later, elaborate Spanish occupation romance, 3 suitors, a Spanish captain, a mestizo, and a common farmer named Juan. Maria chooses Juan. The jealous two frame him for arson against the Spanish garrison. He is shot, crying her name, and she comes down the mountain to curse them. That one is documented as a modern retelling by Michel Lano-Sarr, circulated online. Different peoples, different centuries, different Marias. That is not a mess to be cleaned up. That is what a living legend actually looks like. Now step back and watch what happened to her over 500 years. Start with her name. Maria. Where does a Tagalog forest guardian get a Spanish Christian first name? When Spain Christianized the Tagalog world, the old Arnito framework was not simply erased. It was overwritten. Indigenous mountain and lady spirits got Maria fastened to the front of them, rebranded after the Virgin Mary. Maria Makiling is likely just a contraction of Maria ng Makiling, Maria of Makiling. The name itself is a visible seam, the place where the old belief and the new religion were stitched together, not destroyed, renamed. And then comes Rizal and a second transformation. Writing as an ilustrado, an educated Filipino, from Europe he turns a village legend into something elegiac and political. A guardian who withdraws from those who lose faith in her. Read it in 1890, with the country under Spanish rule, and it is hard not to hear the Philippines addressing its own people, a homeland saying, "I could have protected you if you had kept faith." This is the moment a nature spirit becomes a literary national symbol. And she keeps changing. Today there are still people around Mount Makiling and the University of the Philippines at Los Baños who report a woman in white, sudden rains read as her displeasure, hikers who vanish. There is a conservation movement that has taken her up as the literal guardian of the mountain and its forest. And there is a church sector that has objected to public statues of her, worried they glorify a territorial spirit, which, if you think about it, is the exact same anxiety the Spanish friars had 400 years ago, still alive. But underneath all of it, under Rizal, under Maria, under the movies, there is one thread that survived every layer: the forest etiquette. The rule around Mount Makiling goes like this: you may eat any fruit you find on the mountain, but you must not carry any of it home. And if you get lost, if the mountain seems to turn you around, You reverse your clothing, you turn your shirt inside out to show Maria you are carrying nothing of hers. Notice what that is. It is not a Christian idea, and it is not Risahal's romance. It is the oldest layer of all, the pre-Christian logic that the forest belongs to a spirit, that entering it means asking permission, that taking without leave has a cost. It outlived the religion that tried to replace it, and that inside-out shirt should sound familiar, if you know the next stop on this mountain path, because it is almost exactly the remedy people use against a very different forest spirit, one with a horse's head, or so we are told, that horse-headed trickster of the trails, the Tikbalang, the one you outsmart by turning your shirt inside out, just like on Makiling's slopes. The oldest Spanish record of it, from 1589, does not describe a horse at all. So where did the horse's head come from? Next time, we dig it up.